Right, good afternoon everybody. We'd like to welcome you to the Survey Spatial webinar titled The Value of Spatial Information. I'd now like to hand you over to Hasmeen, who is the chair of the Survey Spatial stream. So welcome, Hasmeen.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. My name is Hasmeen Kalyosatar and I'm the Spatial Stream Chair. Thank you for joining us today in a panel discussion with our experts and chairs of the different streams in Survey and Spatial New Zealand to talk about the value of spatial information. I'm sure there will be lots of similarities and differences in the way we work, but most importantly is to find a common ground that we can all work together. So in terms of format, we have prepared a few questions for our panelists to answer based on their experiences and their knowledge in the stream that they work with. So we will also be welcoming questions from the audience. You can send in those questions using the link that was sent to you this morning, and we will allot some time at the end to answer those questions. And now let's kick off by asking our speakers, Stuart, Mike, and Bruce and Anne to introduce themselves, and then I'll hand it over to Anne to moderate the discussion. Thank you.
Well, kia ora, my name's Stuart Kai. I am the Manager Hydrographic Survey with Land Information New Zealand. My role is the chair of the hydrographic stream with the Survey and Spatial New Zealand.
Hi everyone, my name is Michael Cutfield. I have been chair of Survey and Spatial Engineering Surveying Stream for about 7 or so years now. I currently work for Downer Infrastructure Projects New Zealand, and I am the survey manager for the City Rail Link project here in Auckland.
Hi, I'm Bruce Robinson from Global Survey, the chair of the P&M stream. And just to comment on the PMM stream, we're quite a small group of the Survey and Spatial. We represent about 16% of the members, and quite often we get asked, you know, what do we do? And really, I suppose our focus is on the technical aspects that support all the other members.
Cool. Hi, I'm Anne Harper. I am Business Development Manager at Coordinates, which is a data publishing, data management platform. And I've been chair of SEBA New Zealand for 3 years. So we're the Spatial Industry Business Association. And we exist to grow spatial as an industry and activate it in other industries. So welcome and thanks everybody for joining us on your lunch break in lockdown. Or semi-lockdown. I can see there's some people back in offices now. So I'll start with number 1, our first question, which is, can you please give a quick summary of your stream and the sorts of problems your stream members tackle in their work? So I can just kick off with a little bit of scene setting about the spatial industry from SEBA's perspective. So because I'm not managing a stream, so within SEBA, we've got a wide variety of members. We've got SMEs, we've got startups, we've had large engineering firms. So quite a broad types of problems that our members tackle, most of it is, say, for the consultancies and the larger firms, it's about solving problems using spatial information. So it's helping other organisations to solve their problems and activate their data sets and their work and improve it using spatial technologies. Then we also have another type of companies that are our members, and they tend to be product-based companies like Coordinates, where you create something for other people to do their work, and you're actually a technology company more than a traditional spatial consultancy. Yeah, so that's just an overview for us. Can I hand over to you, Stuart?
Yeah, sure, thanks. And so for the Hydro stream, there's about 60 members in the stream, with professionals working in a variety of hydro-based industries. The stream focuses on programs to maintain and improve best hydrographic practices, such as support and advocacy for stream members going through. You may have heard of the Australasian Hydrographic Surveyor Certification Panel, so that's part of SSI. So they have a certification process and supporting any CPD activities and processes for survey and spatial. And we also undertake reviews and standards of standards and specifications and guidelines. One completed very recently, where the stream has contributed to a review run by LINS and Maritime New Zealand to review the good practice guidelines for hydro surveys in ports and harbours. So that's a great piece of work that's just been released. The stream committee, there are 7 members at the moment. Emily Tardy, she's away on parental leave and gave birth, I think, a week or so ago. So congratulations to Emily. So we're down to 7 members on our committee at the moment, and we meet every couple of months by phone and talk through general standing agenda items. Recently also reviewed the NZQA certificate for hydrographic surveyors and how that ties up to the International Hydrographic Organisation's syllabus for Category B hydro surveyors. So that's the kind of things that we get on with. In terms of a particular problem that I think our members have to tackle, it obviously, we encompass quite a wide variety of activities associated around water. So the stream professions come from ports, harbours, private companies working on rivers, working on lakes, working in ports and harbours, monitoring work, making sure the channels are safe for navigation, and also contributing to maybe seabed habitat and monitoring that coastal environment. But I think really one of the main problems that we are having to deal with at the moment is managing large data sets. And as technology increases and changes, then that allows us now to collect terabytes of data rather than maybe what was in the past megabytes or gigabytes that could be handled by CDs and DVDs being easily distributed to your clients, where now we're maybe having to handle 8 terabyte hard drives. So we're now looking at how do we handle that data set, and looking towards cloud services such as the AWS. So not only just for storing data, but actually running processing software and packages within that cloud space. So that's where, certainly for a hydro point of view, that's one of our main challenges and problems.
Thanks, Stuart. So yeah, for the engineering surveying stream, we are about 40% of the membership. If the old surveyors who aren't doing cadastral surveys, then they're probably doing an engineering type survey. So the kind of problems we have and the kind of work that our stream members do is mostly divided into, I think, two types. There's the data collection, and then there's the set out, right? So for these big engineering projects like City Rail Link, it's the set out, which is the fun stuff for us, and what we get into. There's a lot of problem solving around that, trying to interpret designs, and you get a good sense of achievement when you go set out where a big structure goes, and a few months later there's something big that's going to be there for the next 100 years at least. The other side of our tasks is definitely more related to the spatial side, which is the data collection. So we can divide that into existing condition surveys and as-built surveys. So they're separated by existing conditions. Before any design work will commence on a project like ours, we will collect data around what the ground levels are, as well as any assets, any council assets or any other assets owned by anyone else that might be important that will affect design. So that's existing conditions. Bunch of tools we use for that, which Bruce might be able to expand on as well. But then there's also the as-built side of things, where once we have constructed something, we then submit those coordinates and plan information which relates to what we have built. So the idea being that the next time someone needs to know where something is, they don't have to do that existing condition survey. But that's always a work in progress. So I'll hand over to Bruce.
Thanks, Mike. Our stream is really interested in mass data collection, I suppose, very much like what Stuart was talking about. As well as that is also onto the geodetic side of things and vertical datum 16 or the deformation model, and working with these sort of products. So I suppose, the challenges that we see are really around probably the integration of coordinate-based data sets and vector-based data sets. And then as well as that, it's the extraction of just the part of the data set we require, not necessarily taking the whole data set, and being able to have access to the latest bit of that information. So for example, I take the deformation model. What would really be quite interesting is that have real-time access to that. So as Lynn's updated it, you knew you always were running the latest deformation model, not using a date stamped type data set that will change, and if you don't update, then you're out of sync with everybody. So it's about keeping in sync with all the latest updates.
This is really interesting and exciting to hear directly from you guys, because from our industry perspective, it's these problems that a lot of us are set out building and creating tools to achieve, and we're tackling and dealing with those problems too. Especially dealing with large data sets and mass data collection and the updating and getting data in real time to people. And it's a very, very interesting and very quick moving space as well. Yeah, cool. So next question is, how do your stream members currently use spatial information? So for spatial as an industry, I feel we do a lot of the collection, the enriching, the publishing. Our whole industry is around spatial information and enabling it further. So the kinds of so I just think of the spatial data sets that I've worked with over the years have been like banks will have massive data sets that are all financial, but there's no location associated with it, and they want to know what people are doing and where. So that is just an example of how our stream members would come in and consult to an organisation that had not come from being core purely spatial, but wanting to understand what the geographic landscape is for their business. So that's one example. But also, of course, environments like Stuart was talking about. You mentioned marine birds, shorebirds, that kind of thing. I worked for DOC for 5 years, and that was my passion, was going out and doing all the spatial analysis to look at what kind of ecosystems and all the impacts on an area, so you're able to better manage it. So, yeah, there's just so many applications. So on that note, I will hand over to Stuart. How do your stream members use it?
Yeah, I think kind of reiterating again what you just said, and also what Bruce said earlier. I think most of our stream members are collectors of spatial information, and so providing information for use by others. But obviously, there's a need to access spatial information and data to assist with any planning that's required for their work, and certainly in the work that our guys do, then this includes identifying maybe any existing geodetic control work that may help with setting up for survey, particularly for hydro. Then maybe it's benchmarks, more for the vertical than say for the horizontal control. What's the extent of any existing, in particular, bathymetric data? So we don't want to go surveying the same area a couple of times, so we're expending effort capturing data twice. And then, as you kind of said there, Anna, is the what are some of the areas that may have some restrictions around them, or maybe sensitive, like a marine reserve? So what activities can and can't be undertaken in those reserve areas? So having that information at hand helps surveyors plan their progress, their piece of work, and having that data open and freely available to them obviously makes that planning a lot easier. Other data may be held by private organisations, and so obviously what may come with licensing or data use, data sharing arrangements and agreements to get hold of that data. So so there is certainly a use of the spatial information, certainly in the planning stages of any survey work.
Oh, cool.
Thanks, Stuart. So yeah, it was interesting what you said there, Anne, about how the banks have all this information, but they don't know how the spatial could add value. I think from our point of view, we're kind of the opposite, right? We're quite focused on where things are, and don't understand how this metadata might help us so much in many situations. But where we use it, I kind of touched on in the last question, is mostly around asset information, right? So for example, an engineer might say, hey, we're going to build something over here. Can you show us where all the underground assets are? And we'll go into a spatial database to try and get that kind of information. That would be probably the most common use, but like Stuart has said, also we're using the geodetic database as well to locate survey marks. But overall, we don't generally use spatial data that much in that sense. Over to you, Bruce.
Thanks, mate. My daughter describes myself as a geography nerd, and I tend to think as the P&M stream, we're a set of nerds that sit within a group of nerds, right? And we really our members cover every type of business that exists in the spatial field in New Zealand, I believe, when I look at our membership. So our uses are all very varied, and I suppose that's the challenge that we see, because part of it then becomes down to what software people are running, and really where I think we need to be, I suppose this is one of the challenges. It's about having an open source or a data standard structure that all of our members can actually access, and then because if we have to do this as an entirety as in a country, then we can push back at software suppliers to say this is the model you need to support, because this is what we're going to do. I suppose as users, what do we use? Well, we use every tool that we can possibly can. That's from direct links into the LINS data service through the LINS GeoDB. It's all different types, and it really does depend very much on our individual's business.
Oh, cool. That's cool. Yeah, the data standards is very important, and that's something that we SEBA does a lot of work with, and of course LINS, Stuart, you'd know as well, to get open. I can't remember what it's called. OSGS. There's an open standards organisation, and Coordinates participate as well, and so do many other SEBA members, to get those open standards set and used, because the more those data sets and standards are used, the better and more usable they become. So yeah, really, really important for our industry for sure. And particularly with it allows, from a technology firm perspective, it allows a lot more plug and play with software architecture. So by that, I mean, if you have an open standard, then people can start up some kind of amazing system that can just plug in and talk to all the others. And I think we've seen over the last kind of 10 years a shift from that enterprise architecture, where you have very proprietary standards and large organizations, and you get locked in their system of their software and their data types. But more and more, and going into the future, there's a lot more focus on specialist types of software that can then talk to each other. Yeah. So that was a bit of a tangent there. But if you're really interested about, Mike, when you talk about asset information, because as a geospatial person, you're always like, I want to get hold of that data and then overlay it with other things to help with, as Stuart mentioned, the planning, so that you can say, especially when we're seeing mega change with our geography right now, with everyone being locked down in various places, what the demands could be on an infrastructure and how we can respond to that, and what the load of it will be. As the geography has to shift as quickly as it has, and how it could do in the future. Yeah. Cool. So my next question is, can you give a good tangible example of a typical use of spatial information by your stream members? So for Spatial, I'm going to take an example of a consultancy. So with a spatial consultancy, we've got quite a few that have been established, really established long-term companies, and they would tend to go into, like I said, the bank example. I'll give a supermarket example, where a supermarket traditionally wouldn't have a large spatial team. They probably still don't. And I was called in when I was living in the UK to Tesco's, and they wanted to know what the demographics were for each area, and then they want to look at where all their competitors' stores are. Then they'd want to figure out when was the last time that store was upgraded and what format the store would be. So it's sort of like the difference between a Pack and Save or a Foursquare or a New World Metro. It's like, how do you figure out what format that store will be in the area or the land that you have available? Then you want to figure out what kind of marketing you're going to do, what kind of marketing will your population respond to, and what kind of products are in there. So they will go into deep data analytics to figure out from the demographics and also from the way people spend how to format their store. And when I was there, it's to the point where they're figuring out what position within the supermarket do they put the water, depending on the demographics. Like, do you put it right at the back because no one's going to buy it and you want to drag them through the supermarket, or do you put it right at the front? So it really got down to that level, the kind of analysis they're doing, and a lot of it was based on where drive times are. So they're pulling in as much data as they can to be able to do that. And a consultancy or a software vendor or many of our members would be involved at some point in helping them form that sort of model of their world. So that's for Spatial. Can I hand over to you, Stuart?
Yeah, sure. So I've kind of touched on it before, but yeah, so taking the example as from LINS going out to our, say, a survey contractor for some work, then obviously we would provide specifications and requirements and say a shapefile of an area to be surveyed, and that's handed over to the contractor, so that the survey company will then take that on and take the specification, look at the area, what's required, and then start putting together different layers, different spatial layers. So they may be using, say, a QGIS platform with links into the LINS data service to pull out say high resolution imagery, or depth area polygons that may be available, coastline, raster background charts, and all this then helps, overlaying this information then helps to build a bit of a picture and a better understanding of the area, and then they can then look at how they then plan and progress their piece of work and their costings as well. So in a particular area, these are all the depths, this is the technology that we need to use to meet these specifications and requirements. This therefore means that we need to use certain parameters and settings to be able to achieve that. So that certainly builds up a picture for them, and also drawing in areas or locations of control points to help them understand if they need to install new benchmarks in a new location, if they're going to put in a sea level gauge. So this all becomes a good tool for them, not only just building it up, but giving a better picture for the area, and then also helps them to provide a response back to their client of the most suitable and appropriate way of meeting the requirements, and all based upon evidence and information that helps with any assumptions that they may be making.
Cool, thanks, Stuart. So for us, like on the City Rail Link project, for example, like you can only imagine the depth of spatial information that would have been used by the planners and the designers to start with. So all just planning this whole route, which has been going on for decades, right, before we got here. But for surveyors specifically, yeah, at the risk of repeating the answer to the last question, it is getting that asset information, finding all the metadata that's associated with it. We will be tasked with going and providing more accurate spatial information on that data. Designers will be asking us to always verify these things. Quite often they're not as accurate as what they could be or should be. So most of the time they're pretty close. The metadata normally is the correct thing that's correct, but not always as well. So we'll be taking that information and going out on site, using that to try and find where it should be, and if we find it there, great, we verify it. But yeah, many cases it's not where it says it is. So we will be using that existing information to compare and update quite often pipe types or diameters and even uses. So yeah, that's mostly us.
This is just for my interest, but do you use geological layers? Do you pull in geology data sets or soils or anything else to overlay?
No. We will just have the asset information. Maybe we could. Maybe that could help. But no. Generally, we go out there. Quite often, there's an engineer who's kindly dug it all up for us.
Yeah.
We can go in there and pick it up. Otherwise, we're popping lids and going down there and forgetting about all that stuff and going through all the crap quite literally sometimes. So yeah. Okay.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Okay.
I struggled a bit with this question, Anne, actually. But I think where it comes down from our stream, we're actually more interested in the number. Okay, we want to know where it is and what it is. We don't really care too much other than where it is. It's about that number. And I suppose, so for us, it's all about, I suppose it is the details that sit around that number, and then being able to access that number in the region that our project or the extent of our project is. And that project could be the whole project could be from the top of the North Island to the tip of the South Island, or even extend out beyond that. Or it could be very localized.
Oh, cool. Thanks for that. As you can tell, I'm not a surveyor by background, so a lot of this is kind of new to me. So yeah, it's really interesting. And I'm just going to go out to the audience right now and say, please send us through your questions if you like, and Hasman will lead us through any that come through. So yeah, send them on through. Cool. So the next question is, where do you think spatial information can provide innovation to the projects that your stream members work with? So I thought with spatial, with the SEBA members and working for a company that creates a product, we're always looking for innovation, and you've touched on right in the first question where a lot of the innovations are happening right now, which is about moving large amounts of data around. Like, that is a desperate need, and innovation tends to come from where there is that desperate need. The other place where I see the industry growing as far as the analytics is this, you would have heard the term data science. Never heard of it 10 years ago. It wasn't a term. Yeah, never heard of it. I worked in analysis, and then suddenly you start hearing about data science teams. And of course there were teams of analysts, but now we're talking, you know, I talk to firms that will have no spatial capability, but they'll have 50 data scientists plus, and that's most large organizations. And when we've been talking with them recently, we had a meeting for coordinates with a really large company across India and Australia, and they're a consultancy of data scientists. They've got 500 people, and they were just saying, oh yeah, all the data scientists, you know, they've all got mapping in their back pocket. They can all like pull something together quite hacky. And where the innovation I see in growing the industry is turning that quite hacky into a key part of their analysis, because spatial is integral to a lot of the stuff they do, and knowing where and when to pull it in is appropriate. So that was the main, that is what I feel where the innovations are. What you talk about, the actual heavy lifting of the large data sets and the technology around that, plus getting these data scientists with the right tools and data sets in their hands to do really quality analysis. So I'll hand over to you, Stuart. Is there like spatial information that you see that can provide innovation to hydro projects?
Yeah, I guess I think we're seeing many industries around the world moving to the autonomous world, and whether that's using autonomous platforms such as UAVs, drones, and in the hydro space, you know, the term unmanned surface vessel. So it's a small boat that goes out there, is programmed to go out there and collect data, and hopefully come back to the mothership with that data on board. So having the right spatial information to be able to program, manage these autonomous vessels is key. But then, you know, moving forward, the world is now looking at, you know, autonomous shipping. So there's this term, maritime autonomous surface ships, MAS ships. So these are, you know, ships without any crew that you know, the plan is that they're navigating around the world. So information that is critical for those vessels to be able to do that safely is important, and obviously the data that is collected to produce electronic charts that then go into the onboard systems to manage those platforms is obviously key. So there's, on a world scale, here's the how spatial information can then be used to support that move to that autonomous environment.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, thanks, Stuart. Yeah, there's we have lots of cool toys to play with in terms of collecting data for sure, as well. But I've been speaking with Bruce in the past as well about how spatial information could be better used on our projects. And I've already touched on it again. This asset information collection, just getting that spatial accuracy good is where there's potential for innovation, I believe, where we could, with our survey tools and equipment, be able to link directly to spatial databases and update them live. That would be quite a good goal, and would for our stream, I think, would definitely see an increased use of spatial information. There's a few challenges with that, because we often need to process data to make sure that it's correct, but there are systems working now which can give accurate survey information as it's collected. So being able to have that metadata plugged in and know that the location is good to a certain accuracy, and that accuracy might be part of the metadata as well. And I just know in this project, where you can hear many people talking around me, there's lots of people, and they are usually using spatial data, all of them to some extent, but they're definitely missing out on the full potential, I think, with what can be provided. So, like I say, that's that one step of making it more accurate spatially as we go, and making it available to all the design team would be a good use, good innovations. Anyway, that's my thoughts. Go Bruce.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, Mike and I have talked about it. Look, I think the two guys, Stuart and Mike, have sort of, got most of it said. The only thing I'd like to add to that is, to me, it's about change management and time. It's about understanding what we've collected and how it's changed, and is that change relevant or not, and that is in real time. So we can actually understand if the data we've just observed is in agreement with what we last observed or not, rather than having to go back and actually analyse that data, is to be able to do some sort of real-time, on-the-fly analysis of it.
Oh, yeah, that's so interesting, especially like all the data sets that you're working with and producing are just the absolute foundation for all these technologies and innovations that everyone else is doing. And yeah, I remember seeing when people were starting talking about, say, autonomous vehicles or hearing about autonomous shipping. Yeah, it's great to have the fantastic new shiny technology, but when the data sets can't support it, it hasn't been implemented anywhere yet because of precisely that.
I'd just like to add, to me, the two most important things we can capture with our data is when it was captured, and the accuracy specifications of what we captured it to. And once we have those two bits of information, then we can start to do some change management, because the change management may be through change of technology, better accuracy or worse accuracy, or it may be a change through time. And without those two bits of metadata sitting with our data, we are actually making a bit of a guess.
Yeah, I think I absolutely. So metadata is key, and what's the standards that we use for metadata? There needs to be some kind of an agreed standard on what information is, what data goes with data, so people understand it fully.
Oh, cool. Okay, I'm going to hold on the last couple of questions I have and hand it over to Hasmin, who has some questions from the audience for us. Oh, Hasmin, you're on mute.
Cute. Sorry.
Oh, yeah,
so I have a question from George. He said, how important to each stream of work and New Zealand economy is completing into Land Online the digital capture of surveyed parcels to survey accuracy, like, for example, complete the capture of rural parcels?
This might be Bruce's one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, good to throw the ball. Well, see, that's some of our stream members are definitely involved on that. I think, what do I think about this? I think Land Online is excellent for cadastral data sets, but essentially that's a 2D data set, and most of the data sets we're dealing with these days are a 3D data set. What would be nice would be for us to have that integrated across a lot of different platforms and to be able to share that data. Now, I don't know if that really answers George's question, but that's my answer. Sorry, George.
Yeah, and kind of picking up on that, Bruce. Yeah, that they are looking at a 3D system, right? And I think it would be amazing if it wasn't just cadastral data that went in there, and we could get as-built data, and we could get the shared data like this. That'd be great for everyone to access. And like you're talking about before, you got the date and accuracy stamp on them. So Land Online could do a lot with this, but and I think they are, aren't they, Bruce? But they're still a little bit in the dark, and all these things cost money, don't they? So.
And Land Online has been around for a good number of years now, and it was, when it was first muted, it was, ahead of its time. But it's one of those things that probably needs, it does, and it's going to be updated.
So in relation to that, another question from Mark Dyer. He asks, engineers often cite never trust an as-built, suggesting that value is diminished over time or the source is not trusted. What can be done across all spatial data to see value created at source and retained over time to avoid the cost of recapture?
I'm quite happy to comment on that a little bit, actually, especially if we're talking about services. The Australians actually have a standard, AS 4481 or something, don't quote me on that, but where they actually define how the service was captured. And I think that's a necessary part of as-builting, is that the only point you can really rely on is the point that was physically surveyed. But it's the data in between that you need to understand, was the service potholed? If it was, well, then that point is right, and it's a good indication to the rest. And if it was all exposed and surveyed, then that could be, it's part of that stand essentially. So it's metadata. It really comes around that metadata. Mike?
Yeah. And hi, Mark. I know we've talked about this a lot, but yes, it's interesting on this project actually, because we've got all these NUOs. I believe means network utility operators, and the different levels of trust the designers have on different utilities in terms of trusting the as-built. So recently we did an as-built of a water care utility, and the existing information was 50 years old, 50, and we came up with a different level by about half a meter, and the designer was so adamant, he trusted the water care as-built so much that he was convinced that we were wrong, even though we had scan data and we had photos and all sorts of checks and evidence to show that what we had was right. He had placed an enormous amount of trust in that water care stuff, but then he would go on to say that anything else, you couldn't trust it, and whatever we said was that was the fact. So it seems like these asset owners are taking it on themselves. So hopefully, like Bruce says, there is that standard that we're aware of as well. But trying to get everyone to adhere to that is another battle.
Yep. So I have another one. It's a very interesting question and comments from Christina Holby. Kia ora, Bruce. I'm with you on both the need for and opportunities created by open metadata standards. Different standards are created for different applications by different groups with different discoverability. Is there a standard that you recommend? Is there a job here for Survey and Spatial New Zealand?
100%. That's my answer. There's a job here for Survey and Spatial New Zealand. And really, I think this is definitely something the spatial stream can get there, get in behind, and lead from their point of view, with all our help to help engage in this. And frankly, I'm not aware of a standard really that I would put my hand up and say that works. I know there's lots of different standards, and everyone touts their standard to be great, but I think it is about trying to pick what is best and heavily promote that.
Yeah. So a few years ago, maybe 6 years ago now, the geospatial office with LINS had created this project inviting all the different data users in determining what the data standards should be for all governments. And I was involved in the initial stage of that project. And there's still a lot of, I think, areas that needs to be agreed on, because it's such a wide-ranging, field. And as we see in the different projects that's come out from the different governments, they have metadata projects or RFP that came out. Like for example, for water, Wellington Water had a release a few years ago about metadata standards for their industry, and I think that's a good way of initiating this kind of standards. And I think what's important is for spatial data to be able to have an agreed basic or generic fields and metadata that would enable everybody to work with. Anybody else who would like to share on that? I can go to the next question.
I think just coming back, I think something Anna mentioned earlier. Trying to recall the organisation. So it's the Open Geospatial Consortium.
Yeah.
In particular, so they have a program, I guess, or a group looking at standards, and I think also LINS as well internally. There's looking at standards and interoperability. So it is an issue, and whenever we in our hydro office are looking at metadata to be gathered, we're just not necessarily scratching our heads to a certain extent, but we know what we want to go into our system, but we need to make sure that what we are asking for can be used, and it is to either a national standard, international standard that can be used anywhere and be picked up and harvested by any system trying to capture metadata.
Just a further comment on that, I don't necessarily believe that there can just be one standard. And why I say that is if you look at the data that comes out of Land Online, it's quite uniquely New Zealand, and it works, and a lot of software runs with that. So it doesn't have to be one standard across all products, but there has to be a standard, and Land Online works well because multiple platforms support that. And it doesn't change the way people work, and they can all work with the same data set.
Yeah, maybe another topic for another webinar to discuss metadata standards and data standards. There's one more comment from Tristan. He said, "What do you wish that people from other streams knew about your stream?"
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That we enjoy a beer. Yeah.
I think yeah, everyone knows that, Bruce.
No, I think what people would like to know about our stream is I like to think that our stream is a stream that gets things done and gets on with it. And what we're trying to do is work for the greater good of the whole community. And and when I mean the community, I mean the survey and spatial community and the good of the country. We're not a bunch of, and I'm speaking on behalf of everybody here, I suppose, a little bit. We don't try to just look after what we do. What we're trying to do is actually make it better for everybody. And so I'm sort of keen that people get involved in their streams and their whatever they're interested in, and just help them get on with it.
Yeah. Well said. For us, it's the fact that we're a support role on all these big engineering projects, engineering surveying. It's but the fact is, without us, that they would not start, and they would not commence, they would not progress, and they would not complete. Because we're there from the pick-up stage right through to the close-off stage. So yeah. We're constantly, I don't know if that's, we wish other streams knew this, but we definitely wish that other professions and where we work knew this, so that would be my wish.
Yeah, so for Hydro, yeah, we do have some cool tools, but everybody else, many other streams have the same, certainly moving towards that. One thing, I suppose, the work that a lot of the survey companies, hydro service companies do really benefits and supports New Zealand economy. So, when you're having your cup of coffee in the morning, just be thankful that there was a hydrographic survey that produced a nautical chart for a ship to come to your port to bring you your coffee beans.
For Spatial, what I would like people from other streams to know is we want to get more people sharing and bringing in spatial data sets to help improve whatever you're doing. So way more data sharing and we have great data, and lots of people do, and with the right licensing and the right formats, we can start sharing and improve the quality of everyone's decision making. And more, modelling of what's on the earth. And I guess from a CBIS perspective, what we'd like people from your streams to know is, we want to build and connect and grow the industry all together as a whole. So we really, really want to keep working with you guys, and appreciate you having me on the panel today. So, yeah.
I have one more question. Do you think that 5G will increase the possibility of spatial location and pickup using handheld devices?
It's got to be you, Bruce.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say something, Mike. Yeah, without doubt. But he says that with a cage in his voice. So, if that's all it's touted to be, these sort of things definitely, and actually, we maybe need to look at it the other way. We need to be taking advantage of this, rather than we need to be, preparing to how this can help us do what we want to do, and to be thinking, after 5G, there's probably going to be 6G. So I think as long as we keep thinking forward, and I suppose the reason why we're here today is to understand how we can do things better, and work with the changing technology, because it's never going to stay the same.
Oh, I would say absolutely. 5G, I don't understand it in huge amounts of detail, but I understand that it will allow more computing to happen closer to the device. So that means people are going to be designing apps and data collection and analysis that is going to be far more richer. And I think a lot of the barriers to people using spatial information on their apps is probably the complexity of the projections, the size of the data sets, and that affects the speed of apps on phones. So I think that there'll be huge amounts more demand.
I'd just like to make a comment on 5G. A couple of, just the faster you go, the bigger the accident. So essentially that's with data as well. So, we can run into more troubles with faster speeds because more data is coming through quickly, and that can actually cause problems elsewhere. And the other thing we need to also realise, with the faster you go, the less range you have. So that will mean, there is more chances that you will find there are 5G holes than there are with standard holes. So we need to be a little bit aware that actually, while it's touted to be great things, you would have to be making a decision based on your project location and testing that project location, rather than just saying, we've got 5G and we've got 5G in Dunedin. Does it work everywhere? Or maybe it doesn't. And it's really key to understand that based for your project going forward.
Cool. So on that note, I'll jump into our last question of the day, which is, how can we leverage on spatial information post COVID-19? And yeah, that is a major thing, just so you all know exactly where I am. I live in Auckland, but I'm right now in Foxton, which is very, very close to some quakes that we had. I got a big shaky wake up this morning as these two buildings were like rubbing together. So like everybody has been hugely disrupted by pandemic that's never happened in anyone's lifetime. We've also seen geography, as I described before, change, like people working from home and considering how they're going to work and interact with the environment, which has huge flow-on effects to businesses who have been set up around where people live and where they work. We've seen epic disruption to supply chains. Everybody freaked out about toilet paper is one example. So plus like talking about things such as regenerative agriculture. New Zealand, we're lucky we have enough food supply here, but I remember in the early days seeing news articles from Europe and North America where they were seriously concerned about their food supply and business continuity and all these things. We're also at a point of looking at an economic contraction globally. So all of these things have a huge spatial component. We want to know, and that I liked the question about do we want the surveying of the rural parcels available? Things like that could become, I think, people will start to ask really hard questions about what land use is. So with all this massive change going on, further makes me think, yeah, we want to be able to model the world and the processes that are going on with it so that we can redesign for our future and be responsive to impacts such as earthquakes and pandemics, because they're very, very front of mind and we're all living it at the moment. So yeah, using spatial information, all of it to model the world and deal with the situation we're in today is what I think. Can I open the floor? Has anyone got any comments?
I'll go next. So yeah, our example. So just thinking, what is the difference? Is there a difference between spatial information and survey information? I don't know. That's probably a big discussion for another day. But the moment we got told we were going into level 3, which we had those 48 hours for, I ran out there and got my little drone out and started flying all of the sites that I could, right? And so it was a good snapshot in time, and thanks to that, it enabled so many people to keep working. They were able to see what the site was looking like. They could do these virtual site visits just about. They could say, hey, well, what do we got to do next? Oh yeah, we see this is over there and that's over there, and so that has been quite a good tool. And also the day we came back into level 3 again after everything, and did the same again. And so it's good to show that really there really was no work over that time, and but also what else might have changed, but the benefit of being able to use the drone, sure, we had to get out, and it wasn't essential work, so I couldn't do it during level 4, but it was information that I could collect for a lot of people's benefit to use from their home. So I think that's kind of relevant to the whole situation.
Yeah, I can add on a little bit. I'm pleased you mentioned earthquake, actually, Anne, because really COVID-19, yeah, okay. But to me, what we always need to have is like a plan B, right? Because there are places where edge computing doesn't work, and we need to be in a situation where we can actually continue if we lose our internet, if we lose our data. So I tend to think part of this is actually thinking about, rather than just COVID, it's actually about what happens when we get into the situation where we may not, someone puts the spade through the fibre cable outside the front door. What is your plan B? How are you going to keep your employees keep working? You know, and we definitely saw this during the Christchurch earthquake. They, you know, guys even had trouble charging batteries. So we need to think that, you know, mankind sits right on a knife edge, and if we slip down that one side, what's your plan B? How are you going to keep your people working? You know, how are you going to communicate with your people? And probably at that time, spatial data and information becomes almost more important, right? So it's also about being able to have access to data when times you don't think you can have access to data. And what does that look like? I don't know. Stuart, maybe you'd like to comment on that from a hydro perspective, really?
Yes, I guess maybe not so. Yeah, I think expanding that beyond COVID. So, you know, any natural event that that has a significant interruption to our daily working life, and how do we as spatial experts, no matter what stream we're in, how do we contribute to that? And that will kind of comes down to, you know, what's the resilience that we have within us as an institute, but also nationally as well, and how do we contribute to that as from each of our professions, and that may vary depending on the location of the event, whether it's an earthquake inland or tsunami, so something along the coastline. So we all have a part to play. And yeah, so it's that not only the resilience and bouncing back from that, but having something in place that we can actually access that spatial data and the spatial information to help us make those decisions. If we lose that connection, then,
Thank you.
How do you do that?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's almost 1 o'clock. I just would like to thank our speakers, Bruce, Mike, Stuart, and Anne, for sharing your experiences and knowledge today. Really, truly meaningful and timely discussion. And of course, thank you everyone for your time. And we have about 100 people who are online today. So on behalf of the Spatial Stream Committee, Tristan Murray, Mike Ladd, Andrew Closton, we hope everyone enjoyed the discussion. We will be sending out a short poll to gauge your interest to these types of events in the future. So hopefully we see you again at the next event, and have a great and safe long weekend ahead. Thank you.
See you later.
Thank you.